Welcome to Anime Recaps. In this video, we will explain Charlotte. This anime tells the story in an alternate reality where a small percentage of children manifest superhuman abilities. A focus is placed on Otosaka Yuu, a high school boy, and Nao Tomori, the student council president of a school founded as a haven for children with abilities to protect them from the evil organizations. Will they be able to protect those children and prevent them from using their powers arbitrarily? Let's find out in Charlotte. Charlotte tells the story of a middle school teenager, Otosaka Yuu, who has the super ability to possess other people for 5 seconds. With that ability, he can possess smart students and then copy their answers. As a result, he got the highest score on the school exam. Yuu doesn't use that ability for noble things, but solely for his personal gain. Practically, he plans to use that ability when he later takes the entrance exam for Hoshinoumi, which is a prestigious high school. But he has one problem: he doesn't know which students he should possess. So, to find information about smart students who will take the entrance test at Hoshinoumi High School, he sneaks into the cram schools and eavesdrops on the conversations of the students there. On the day of the entrance test, Yuu did not encounter any difficulties. He already knows which students should be the target of his cheating. The plan was a success. He was accepted into Hoshinoumi High School with the highest score. Yuu continued to use that ability in high school, and because of that, he managed to rank first in every semester exam. No wonder, because the students consider him a brilliant student. Yuu is often approached by the girls at his school. But he didn't want to be with girls who looked too ordinary. He wanted a beautiful girl, and he had found the girl, Shirayanagi Yumi. Therefore, he makes a plan to get close to her, which by possessing a truck driver, then directs the truck at her. But seconds before the truck hits Yumi, Yuu comes to her rescue, making him look like a prince saving a princess. After the wound was treated in the nurse's room, she then invited Yuu to eat together. Again, Yuu's plan goes smoothly, and he and Yumi become close. However, Yuu's luck changed the next day. When class time was over, he was suddenly called to the student council room to rework the entrance exam questions. It turned out that he was suspected of having cheated because he always got the highest score at school every semester. So, to prove that he was really intelligent, he was tested in an isolated room. If he proves unable to complete the entrance exam questions or if his grades are low, he will be expelled from school. Of course, Yuu had trouble filling out the answer sheet. Panicked, he decided to possess the student council president to see the answers to the questions. But the funny thing is, the paper held by the student council president does not contain the answer, but a picture of a sexy woman. 5 seconds passed, and Yuu returned to his body. But to his surprise, he found a gray-haired girl who somehow was already beside him. And to make matters worse, the girl, Tomori Nao, was recording when Yuu possessed the student council president. His ability is finally exposed. In his panic, Yuu could only run outside the room. But when he was outside, without realizing it, he was chased by someone named Takajo Jojiro. Surprisingly, Jojiro turns out to have a super ability too, which is to run as fast as lightning. His abilities are similar to the Flash. The only difference is that Jojiro can't control himself when he's running. Evidently, even though he had caught Yuu, he kept running until they flew and landed in the river outside the school. Not long after, Nao caught up with them. Knowing that Yuu has a superhuman ability, she then forces him to transfer to her school, Hoshinoumi Academy, a special school for children who have superhuman abilities. It turns out that Yuu is not the only one who has it. There are many other young people like him, each with different abilities. But of course, Yuu doesn't necessarily agree to change schools just like that. Feeling mocked, he angrily tries to attack Nao. But it turns out that Nao has the ability to make herself invisible, causing his attacks to only hit the air. Yuu felt helpless in front of Nao. Moreover, she also holds a video about Yuu's secret. So, he reluctantly agreed to her orders. A few days later, Yuu and his younger sister, Ayumi, move into the Hoshinoumi Academy dormitory. Nao and Jojiro also helped with their moving. Long story short, Yuu starts his first day at Hoshinoumi Academy. And on that very first day, Nao, the student council president, immediately forced him to join the student council. The student council at Hoshinoumi Academy itself has the task of ensuring the safety of the possessors of super abilities from evil organizations, as well as preventing them from using their powers arbitrarily in public. The next day, Nao gathers Jojiro and Yuu in the student council room during recess to discuss the plan to find someone who has psychic abilities and pyrokinesis. With the help of Takehito, who can track the whereabouts of superhuman power users and find out what kind of abilities they have, they can quickly locate their target. Without wasting any time, Nao, Yuu, and Jojiro begin their investigation and search for their target in an alley, where Nao then finds a suspicious man. She decided to go after the man, but just as she turned a dead corner, the man punched her in the cheek, sending her crashing down. Leaving Nao behind, Yuu and Jojiro continued their pursuit, until some time later, they came to a dead end. This is where Jojiro comes into action. He pulled out his ability, ran as fast as he could, and rammed the man. After they caught the man, Nao immediately interrogated him to determine if he was the target they were looking for. The man turned out to be not an ability user, but he was looking for a user, namely Nishimori Yusa, nicknamed Yuu Otosaka. Luckily, they didn't have to look too far, because soon, they ran into a man who could help them meet Yuu Otosaka, who turned out to be a singer. They then went to the place where Yuu Otosaka was. After they talked for a while, Nao, Yuu, and Jojiro realized that Yuu Otosaka's ability was to become a medium for the spirits of the dead, and the spirit of her dead older sister, Misa, often takes advantage of Yusa's ability to possess her body. Sure enough, at this moment, Misa's spirit suddenly entered Yuu Otosaka's body, thus making Nao, Yuu, and Jojiro shocked at the sudden change in her character. The two of them are completely opposite. Yuu Otosaka is a cheerful and innocent girl, while Misa is grumpy and tomboyish. Besides, Misa has the ability of pyrokinesis, something that Yuu Otosaka doesn't have. Seeing their abilities, Nao then revealed her intention to transfer Yuu Otosaka to Hoshinoumi Academy. Misa agrees that her sister will move to Hoshinoumi, as long as Nao helps Yuu Otosaka first to get rid of the producers who are chasing her. Nao was willing to help her, and without much trouble, she was able to solve the problem. A few days later, Yuu Otosaka finally transferred to Hoshinoumi Academy. The class became excited by her arrival, because it turned out that she was a famous pop singer. During recess, Nao takes Yuu and Jojiro back to the student council room to start the next investigation. This time, there were not only 3 of them, because Yuu Otosaka had joined them. Without further ado, Takehito indicated the location, as well as the ability of their next target, which is telekinesis. They then come upon their target, Arifumi, who is a pitcher in his school's baseball club. His telekinesis ability really helped him as a pitcher. He often uses it to make dives that are difficult for the opponent's batter to hit. Because of that, Nao warned him never to abuse his abilities again. But of course, Arifumi refuses to be ordered like that, so Nao is forced to challenge him to a baseball game, with a bet that if his team loses, Arifumi is forbidden to use his abilities again in the match. In the end, the match was won by the Hoshinoumi Academy team. As a result, Arifumi promised he would never use his telekinesis for the match again. The next day, Yuu accidentally sees Nao being beaten by other girls at school. He didn't know what was the reason for their bickering, so he decided to just peek from afar without doing anything. But moments later, Nao ordered the student council members to gather again, as if nothing had happened to her. And as usual, Takehito performed the ritual, and this time he discovered that their next target could fly. But the target location is in the forest. Therefore, before they went to the location, they took the time to shop and prepare supplies, because they intended to camp in the forest to find him. After they waited for days, they never found the person they were looking for. Worried about Ayumi being left alone at home, Yuu then asks Nao to let him go home for a while. But sadly, Nao asks him to stay. Fortunately, their target finally appeared the next day. Nao hurriedly took out her camera, wanting to take a video of the man. But the man didn't seem to like being recorded. He grabbed her camera before flying into the air. Yuu reacted quickly by taking over the man's body, so that the man fell and was caught by them. However, Yuu felt something strange happen to him, because when he possessed the man, he seemed to be able to control his flying ability. After capturing the target, Nao immediately gave the man advice not to use his ability again. And after that, they returned to their respective home. When he got home, Yuu found Ayumi had a fever. As a good older brother, Yuu certainly takes care of her. The next day, they regrouped in the student council room, and it didn't take long for Takehito to identify their next target. But to their surprise, the target, who has the ability to destroy everything around, is in the Hoshinoumi Academy dormitory. Immediately, Yuu remembered and worried about Ayumi, who still had a fever. Nao then decides to visit her after school to make sure that the person with the destructive ability isn't Ayumi. After school was over, Yuu, Nao, and Yuu Otosaka visited Ayumi, while not forgetting to bring her food. But when they get there, they find Ayumi's friends have arrived first. Seeing her condition, Nao then suggests that Yuu forbid Ayumi from going to school for the next few days, even if her fever has gone down. Yuu agrees with Nao, and he still tells Ayumi to rest even though the next morning Ayumi is getting better. However, during the day, she sneaks into the school secretly without Yuu knowing. Luckily, in the end, Nao found out about it. She immediately gathered Yuu and the others in the student council room to talk about Ayumi. Because Nao has a bad feeling, he invites them to meet Ayumi at her school. Nao's hunch ended up right. At her school, Ayumi is met by her classmate, Kanishi, who is eager to kill her. The reason was because she was jealous of the popular Ayumi. And because of that, Ayumi accidentally awakens her destructive power, causing part of the school building to collapse in an instant. Worse yet, Ayumi herself was crushed by the ruins of a building. From the outside, Yuu can only watch as Ayumi's school collapses. Without a second thought, he rushed to the school and searched for her among the rubble. And that's when he too was hit by the rubble. After being hospitalized for a while, Yuu wakes up, and the first thing he asks is Ayumi. But sadly, she is already dead. Her death made him very sad. He regretted not having had time to thank her for the kindness she had given him. Over time, his sadness turned into depression, making him lock himself in his room. Until in the end, Yuu decided to leave the dormitory. But out there, he acts like an undead, living with no purpose at all. And occasionally he acts like a lunatic. He is lucky to have a friend like Nao. She patiently tried to comfort Yuu, make him food, until finally she managed to bring him back to the dormitory and even managed to persuade him to be active again in the student council. The next day, Yuu goes back to school. His routine went back to normal, and during his break, Nao called him to the student council room. But this time, Nao didn't plan to go on a mission. Together with Yusarine and Jojiro, they then listened to Yusarine's newest song. Not only that, Nao also invites Yuu to watch the concert of her favorite band, Jian. A few days later, Yuu and Nao went to Jian's concert. But in the middle of the song, Yuu suddenly faints, and then he dreams that he was in a laboratory with Ayumi. Not long after, Ayumi was brought in for research, but that's when she accidentally collapsed half of the laboratory, throwing the situation into chaos. After that, Ayumi is quarantined because it is considered too dangerous, while Yuu goes to look for his older brother, Shunsuke, who has the ability to time travel. In the end, he managed to find Shunsuke tied to a bed. But at the same time, Yuu woke up from his dream. Yuu woke up at the hospital, and there were two people accompanying him, Nao and Takehito, whose appearance was for some reason very different from usual. Takehito then brought Yuu and Nao to meet Shunsuke, but unfortunately, he is blind. Even so, he can still tell about his experiences while repeatedly traveling through time to save people with superhuman abilities from the clutches of evil researchers. But his efforts always fail, forcing him to keep on time traveling again and again, until his vision fades because he travels so often. But at one point, when Yuu asked him about the high school he wanted to attend, Shunsuke suddenly got an idea to build a school that could accommodate and protect people with superhuman abilities. For that, Shunsuke made his last time travel, and that's what made him blind. Fortunately, he and his friends managed to establish the school he wanted, Hoshinoumi Academy. He then asked his friend to erase the memory of him from Yuu and Ayumi. That's why Yuu never remembered Shunsuke until he had a dream about him. After Shunsuke finished his story, he explained about Yuu's true abilities. It turns out that Yuu's abilities are not only limited to possessing other people for 5 seconds. If he wants, he can also take other people's super abilities. In other words, Yuu had the strongest ability among ability users. After that, Shunsuke asks Yuu to take his time travel ability so that Yuu can save Ayumi. Yuu certainly didn't miss that opportunity. He takes Shunsuke's abilities and returns to the past, when Ayumi was still alive. This time, because he already knows what will happen, he manages to take Ayumi's destructive ability and save her from Kanishi. On their way home, Yuu and Ayumi meet Takehito, who wants to take them both to meet Shunsuke again. It turned out that Shunsuke was in a laboratory, and he asked his 2 younger siblings to be there because there was an organization that was after Yuu's abilities. In the research laboratory, Yuu and Ayumi are then introduced to a doctor named Shutsumiuchi, who explains to them about the origins of their superhuman abilities. Turns out, it all came from Comet Charlotte, which passes near Earth once every 75 years. The comet doesn't just pass by, it also scatters dust, giving some of the proteins that absorb it an extraordinary ability. Shunsuke and his friends have been trying to create a vaccine to prevent children infected with comet dust from developing abilities. Meanwhile, Takehito plans to go to school accompanied by a driver. But unexpectedly, on the way, the driver suddenly explains that his family is currently being held captive by an organization that targets superhuman abilities. Without thinking, he immediately asked the driver to take him to meet the kidnappers. The driver then took him to an abandoned warehouse, and there, it turned out that the kidnappers had also held Nao captive. But in the end, there wasn't much Takehito could do alone. He was beaten and tortured by the kidnappers. Unable to bear the torment, he gives them information about children with superhuman abilities and Shunsuke's contacts. After that, the kidnappers contacted Shunsuke and asked him to hand over Yuu if they wanted the captives to be safe. Realizing the situation was not in their favor, Shunsuke then devised a plan with his friends. But in the end, he knows that Yuu is the only person who can save the captives. Finally, Yuu set out alone to meet the kidnappers. But then, one of the kidnappers stabs him in the eye with a knife, causing him to be unable to use his time travel ability. He is getting more and more desperate. Until finally, he activated Ayumi's destroying ability, causing the building to be destroyed instantly. Yuu survived, but not with Takehito. He died after trying to protect Nao from falling debris. Despite this, Yuu was still badly injured. He had to be treated for days before he could finally walk again. And the thing he did after he recovered was to meet Shunsuke, who was still mourning Takehito's death on the hospital roof. After that, he returned to his room, and there sat Nao waiting for him. She advises him to take away all the abilities possessed by ability users around the world to protect them. Even though she doesn't mean it seriously, unexpectedly, he agreed to her proposal. And after that, he confessed that he liked her. Fortunately, she accepts his confession, saying that she will wait for him after he finishes his task. Then, they will formalize their relationship as a couple. After that, Yuu returned to meet Shunsuke to convey his plan. With tears in his eyes, Shunsuke let Yuu go. After a few days, Yuu's journey began. First, he came to Singapore, before moving from country to country looking for every ability user and stealing their abilities. But his habit of constantly stealing abilities is starting to take a toll on his memory. The more abilities he takes, the more he doesn't recognize himself and even has trouble controlling his body. He was even dubbed the one-eyed god of death after losing control. He caused great chaos and destruction, nearly killing people. But fortunately, he then never lost total control over his body and mind, because every time he almost lost control, he always looked at the notes given by Nao, reminding him of the promise he had made with her in his original duty. The last country he visited was China. However, just as he had managed to find the final target and had already taken the abilities, the exhausted Yuu was attacked by someone. Luckily, before he lost his life, Shunsuke came to his rescue and brought him back to Japan. When Yuu woke up, he was already in the hospital, with his memories completely gone. He didn't recognize Nao anymore, who had faithfully waited beside him while he was unconscious. However, with a smile on her face, Nao told Yuu that she is his lover. The moral that we can learn from this anime is how we should use our strengths to help others. Because helping each other, that's one of the things that make us human.